What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some... Well, I said I'd never touch a subreddit again, but we're back, r/EntitledParents. I had a little bit of extra time, so I thought, why the hell not? Thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to be here, for getting involved with the channel, Twitter, Discord, everywhere. Thank you so, so much. And with that being said, let's crack on straight away with today's stories. Here we go. Much love, guys. Now, this first story comes from Lady Mayhem. Please, sir, stop dangling your baby over the shark tank. So I was inspired by the Not Petting Zoo post from earlier to write up my own experiences of working as a seasonal temp at Sea Life Centre in England. This happened the year before I started uni. So I'm 18 and I've just moved to a new city to be with my, now thankfully ex-boyfriend, and I'm looking for whatever job I can get. I see an ad for the job at the local Sea Life Centre, a chain of aquariums across the UK, for someone to do talks to the punters and such. I've been in theatre groups since I could walk, so I think great, I can learn scripts and talk about fish, and managed to get a 6-week seasonal job over October for half term and leading up to Christmas. About 50% of my job is doing these talks for school groups about the otters, the sea turtles, the Finding Nemo exhibit and so on. 50% is cleaning the outside of the tanks, 5% is dressing up in the giant otter mascot suit and getting kicked to shreds by toddlers at birthday parties, and 30% was sitting freezing my arse off at the touch pool, a simulated rock pool with crabs and sea anemones the kids could touch, situated right above the constantly open front door, directly across from the open top black tip reef shark and moonray tank, and Basil, the bottom feeding bamboo shark. He was my favourite. That's right, I said open topped, with 1.3 metre glass sides filled with water, sharks and stingrays. I kid you not, the number of parents I had to ask not to dangle their babies or toddlers over the 1 metre deep water was ridiculous, at least 3 a day, probably rising to 10 or 12 on the busy weekends. The parents were not impressed by my adherence to basic common sense. I got thrown incredulous looks, angry retorts, the lot. The crown and glory was the dad who informed me, "It's fine, you could just jump in there after them." Dude, I am 5'2" minimum wage worker. You could not pay me to jump in the shark infested water to save your baby that you just dropped. Sorry, not sorry. That job was kinda terrible, to be honest, and the lunchroom was right next to the very smelly quarantine area. I was very happy to leave at the end of my contract. This really doesn't surprise me, and when I've been to like Sea Life Centres and, you know, aquariums, you do see this kind of stuff happening, and I've seen like in the touch pool things, like people actually picking out like starfish and just holding them in the air and stuff like that, and you think, God man, what are you doing? What are you doing, you tool? But Words in Verse says, reminds me of the multiple times people have asked me, where are the animals? I politely say that animals have heated/cooled indoor areas they're allowed to roam through. What I really want to say is, only humans are stupid enough to be outside in this weather. Then my favourite question, why is the elephant still outside? Usually asked during after hours events. Response, he weighs 10,000 pounds. You gonna tell him it's bedtime? I'm not. Always gets a laugh. And Griselda Loves Cat says, why are people such idiots? My dad taught junior high and high school for 40-ish years. He hated field trips, mostly because of the way the parents, who were the chaperones, behaved. The last time any of the schools in his district was allowed into the local zoo, insanity seemed to rule. There was an open-top tank of starfish at the zoo. Parents encouraged the kids to reach out and pet the starfish. The same parents freaked out when the staff got angry because there were big "do not touch" signs all over the tank. The kids ended up killing about half the starfish, either by being rough and literally ripping them apart for fun. How is that fun? Then a parent boosted one of their kids over a fence to go investigate the gorillas. Luckily the kid didn't get hurt, but it was the last straw for the zoo officials. This is not a district from a small town, it was a very large school district, and for 10 years there were no more zoo field trips for any of the schools in the district. Honestly, if a parent is dumb enough to dangle their kids over a shark tank, maybe the parents need a Darwin Award. And finally, My Rifle Is My Friend says, your sign needs to be a picture, maybe the word danger, over a drawing of a shark biting a baby in half with lots of blood to get the point across. You can't be all subtle with these morons. Oh dear, here we go, entitled parents, guys. Let's move on to the next story, shall we? And our next story comes from Green Sugar Zero. Entitled parents won't wear a mask and they are escorted off the plane. Cast me, myself, EM entitled mum, ED entitled dad, their teen, he wasn't entitled and looked embarrassed, FA flight attendants. So I had to fly back home for my aunt's funeral. I was sitting in first class across from EM and ED. ES was behind them. Now I mentioned sitting in first class because we were in that front row and the flight attendants were in plain sight of us the whole time. So basically it would be really stupid to pull your mask down because they would catch you so fast. And it's fucking stupid for obvious reasons, being that we're in a pandemic. So our flight gets going and ED and EM take their masks off about 15 minutes in. The flight attendant comes around and here's what happens. Flight attendant says, "Hey guys, I need you to wear your mask throughout the whole flight unless you are eating." ED says, "Well, we are talking." To which flight attendant replies, "You can talk with them up." "I can't hear with them up and you interrupted us." "Mum, we're taking this very seriously," and gets cut off by Entitled Dad. Entitled Dad yells, "We know what we are doing." Makes no sense, I know. Flight attendant calls the pilot and explains the situation. "Sir, I just talked to the pilot. If you can't wear your mask, we will deplane." EM throws her mask to the floor. "I guess we have no rights in this country. Complete government control." So yeah, we ended up deplaning. Their son looked genuinely embarrassed and I felt bad for him. I felt even more bad for the flight attendant, but she was a badass and handled the situation well. I don't know if I could have been as calm and respectful as she was. I saw a video, I wonder if it's these people of this exact situation the other day, and I just think, why can't you just keep your mask up? It's not fucking difficult, is it? It's really not that difficult. And Tuna Tofu says the airlines are no longer screwing around with that shit. Anti-maskers endanger the other passengers and the crew. No different from carrying a gun on board. Comply or get off. And Crash Bandicoot says, "I guess I don't have a right to irresponsibly risk other people's health during a raging pandemic. George Washington would be thrashing in his grave." Whee! Fuck these people, man. Edit, do not fuck them literally. This is how you get more of them. And Dally B says, "And are placed on a no-fly list. Wait till they want to fly somewhere and can't." Ah, yes, they just get crazier and crazier. You always come back to this sub and it's always just like the most insane stories. We're going to move on to the next one now. And our next story comes from Meltdown. Uncle burns every last bridge and spends the rest of his life alone. Just getting this out of the way first, this isn't my parents specifically, but there isn't exactly a dedicated place for entitled uncle posts, so anywho. My mum and uncle are both literal baby boomers, i.e. born in the 50s. I'm a Xennial myself, halfway between Gen X and Y, and I've made some mistakes earlier on in life. I struggled through a narcotic addiction that basically consumed an entire decade of my life, and although I'm 15 years clean, it never truly goes away. Like day to day, I don't have a problem, but if I saw a bottle of hydrocodone sitting out in the open unattended, it would take a serious force of will to not grab a couple just for old time's sake, or whatever my justification would be. It's goddamn insidious, I tell you. Anyway, with that background info out of the way, my mum is pretty decent. She's kind of like a hippie in a way, but my uncle on the other hand is a full-blown right-wing lunatic. I'm talking parlor user, stop the steal, lock her up, build the wall, and so on and so on. But of course, we had to put up with him over the holidays, partially because he's family, partially because he's got terminal cancer and likely doesn't have more than a year to live. Unfortunately for everyone around him, this expiration date has only emboldened him because he knows that there can't be any truly serious consequences for his actions, and he's become more and more concerned with simply getting his way than actually being correct. And after this most recent stunt, even being a decent human seems to have gone out the window. We had a small gathering over Christmas at my mum's place. Nothing huge, just me, my mum, uncle and his wife. Pretty small family to begin with, and add COVID to the mix, yeah, we kept it simple. Things went pretty well, we had dinner, managed to avoid talking about politics, and as the evening wore on, we ended up sitting around the living room drinking beer and playing cards as we usually do. At some point I got up to take a leak, and my uncle quickly gets up and says, "Oh hey, can I get in there first?" Sure, no problem, he's the one with a weak bladder. He does his business, then when it's my turn I see it. On the bathroom counter right out in the open, my uncle's painkillers. I can't even describe the wrestling match that went on in my head. with the devil and the angel on opposite shoulders just beating the living shit out of each other. Just one more. It's not like I'm fully relapsing, right? They just call it a slip. And besides, the arsehole kinda had it coming, doesn't he? Railing against public health, and now the only reason he has treatment to prolong his life is due to Medicare. Blah blah blah. I went back and forth longer than I'd care to admit, but in the end I grabbed the bottle unopened and handed it to my uncle in the living room. I said something like, "Hey, you left these out, figured you'd not want to lose them." At that point, he shakes out the pills into his hands and counts them. Then he abruptly stands up and says, "Ha! All there, see? I told you." And his wife has this shocked look and says, "I told you not to do that. My God, what's wrong with you?" I'm not going to try and recall a transcript of what all was said over the next half an hour, but it turns out that he was recently arguing with his wife that addictions aren't real and it's all personal choice. He used me as an example, saying that if I could beat it, anyone could, and that all these people hooked on heroin or meth are completely free to go and become millionaires anytime they want. It's just by choice they keep using. And he told her ahead of time that he could leave his pills out and I wouldn't take them because my addiction doesn't really exist and I'd grown out of that phase. She told him not to, and he went and did it anyway, just so he could be right. He was completely willing to sacrifice me for his own petty argument. If he was wrong, no skin off his back, he could just claim ignorance, while putting all the blame squarely on me for taking his drugs. And being right, he can sanctimoniously claim he knew all along that I wouldn't do it. What he didn't account for was the fact that he just destroyed any benefit of doubt that would be willing to give him up until that point. My mum kicked him out. He turned to his wife and said, "You can stay, but he has to leave." In the end, they both left, mainly because my uncle can't drive due to pain meds, and Christmas ended up with just me and my mum. Her apologising profusely and me trying to convince her that she didn't need to apologise because she wasn't the arsehole. At least next year, he won't be around to fuck it up. They aren't getting a divorce because there's not much point in divorcing a dead man walking, but she left him and is now living with her sister. My uncle has burnt every bridge and now he has to spend his twilight months completely alone. And now that Parlour's been shut down, he doesn't even have his right-wing echo chamber to keep him company. Kind of sad end for a sad man, but hey, at least he got to be right one last time, huh? Firstly, you got to say congratulations for being clean and doing you and fighting that temptation wherever you go. Well done you, really well done. And I hope that didn't sound patronising in any way. It kind of popped in my head that might sound patronising. I didn't mean it in that way. I genuinely mean it. Well done to you. And it's like you said in this situation, he burnt those bridges. He made that choice. And why does he think that? I try to get in people's head when I read this story, when they read these stories, and I think, what was in his head to try and do that? To try and prove a point? Where's the empathy of what OP would be going through in this situation? It's just so ridiculous, man. And the comments on this one were pretty much just all with OP saying, you know, Uncle got what he deserved in this situation. It's, you know, it's all on him in the end. And he's going to die alone because of his own actions. And our next story comes from Future Flux. We're a pet sitting service, lady. Okay, buckle up. This is a doozy. I love it when people say doozy. Is that an American thing? I love it. I work for a pet house sitting company and had a new client on my schedule for 3 visits a day for 2 weeks to take care of a dog. When I get to the house, I go in and see a kid and thought they must be running late leaving and didn't let us know. So I said hi to the kid and said it's okay, don't be scared, then called out for the parents. The kids said they're gone. I asked, what do you mean? The kid then said I needed to hurry up and make her breakfast and take her to school. I asked again, what do you mean? Where are your parents? She said they'd gone on their trip and again told me to hurry up because she's hungry. I asked how old she is. She said 7. I asked if they left you here alone. She said yeah. Her mum told her we'd be by in the morning to make her breakfast and take her to school. In the afternoon to pick her up from school and make her a snack. And at night to make her supper. I asked where's Macy? Made up name, the dog. She said they don't have a dog. I said when the owner came for the client meeting and to get the house keys she met a dog. The kid said her mum borrowed the neighbour's dog. Oh my god, I called the company owner and told her what was going on. Of course she was flabbergasted and came over immediately. She tried to get hold of the kid's parents but they weren't answering their phones, so she called CPS and explained everything when they got there. CPS took the kid, the parents' info and left. The next day, kid's mum called the owner and left a rambling message screaming about how we could turn her kid into CPS and we broke the contract, so they were going to sue her for that and also for the cost of their ruined vacation. The owner called them back and told them that our agreement was to take care of a dog, not a kid, and that was illegal anyway. Also, borrowing a dog from her to meet for the client meeting was deliberate misrepresentation, so good luck with a lawsuit. She hasn't heard from them since. I guess our pet sitting service was cheaper than hiring someone to watch the child properly. We still can't understand how this woman thought this would actually work. Now these are the ones that I really struggle with, and I think, I don't doubt there is parents out there that is that insane to do that, but to actually go through with it. And I think, Jesus Christ, is there really that insane people out there? Oh man. And if they are, then this poor child in this situation, man, that's awful when you really think about it. But Luck of the Draw 34 says, thank you for calling CPS. There's a few stories in here where people actually took care of a kid, dropped off on their porch, and tried to have a reasonable conversation with parents later. It never ends well. And Nanny Angie says, geez, I'm flabbergasted that someone would treat their child like that. And Tuna Tofu says, sadly I'm not. I had complete strangers show up at my door with kids. I work a later shift and don't go to work until 10, so maybe they think I stay at home, and try to drop off kids that the daycare across the street, which is either kick them out or has no room for said kid, can't accommodate. I've been half dressed or heading out to the office and gotten, here, you watch her. No, I'll be back at 6, you're making me late. Tough titties, I have a job, so I slam the door or drive off. And Tuna Tofu also says again, I'm also guessing you aren't a 24/7 dog care, just drop in and feed and walk, so really you weren't even a solution in the least because the kid would be alone most of the time to take care of herself 22 hours a day. Wow, another insane one. And our next story is from Witch of the Woods. Get married and have babies because you owe us grandkids. My parents. I've posted this story on 2X chromosomes and just no family, so I thought I'd share it here as well. I'm a 38-year-old woman. I have a great career, a loving boyfriend, 31, great pets and friends. I've never ever wanted kids. 5 years ago, I ended a relationship with a man named Jason, name changed, who I thought wanted the same things I did. We had been together for 2 years in 2015. We'd travel together, read comics, play video games, and do all kinds of fun things. I'd always been honest with Jason that I never wanted kids. He told me he didn't either. Then in the summer of that year, I began to notice changes in him. He would talk about how great our friends' kids are. He tried to get me to spend time with his nephews, even though I wasn't close to them. He also began talking to my parents way more than usual. Then one evening, he said he wanted to have dinner with my whole family. I found this a bit strange as I don't often spend time with my family, but for him, I agreed. We were having dinner, my parents and siblings, my brother and sister were there, then he dropped a bomb on me. He got down on one knee and said, I love you, I want you to be the mother of my children. What the actual fuck was the first thing that came out of my mouth? We hadn't talked about getting married, much less kids. I never wanted kids and wasn't ready for marriage. I took him to another room and asked him what the hell he was doing. He dropped another bomb and told me he'd been talking to my parents about us getting married and starting a family. Let that sink in. He talked to my parents, not me, about our future. He said he asked my dad's permission. My dad's permission before he asked for my consent. I was furious. All this was obviously meant to pressure me into saying yes. My mother, being nosy, walked right into the room we were in and asked what was wrong and why I had not said yes. I told her the whole family that they needed to leave. When they left, I told Jason a new asshole. I asked him how dare he assume that I was going to marry him and have kids with him. When I had made it very clear that I did not want those things, he told me he was hoping that I would grow up and want something meaningful. He had the gall to act like I was a bad person in all of this. I threw him out and the following day I ended the relationship for good. My parents were pissed at me. My mum cried about how she'd been looking forward to getting grandkids from me and how I had let her down. My siblings told me I had made a huge mistake by letting such a nice guy go. My dad actually told me to apologise to him. Their behaviour told me that my desires and consent didn't matter to them one bit. They just wanted me to follow the same life script that they did. Till today, I haven't forgiven them, mostly because I still think that they and my ex were right. My current boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. He and I share the same passions and he has had a vasectomy. So I feel much more secure when he says that he doesn't want kids. My parents and siblings are no longer a part of my life. I hardly ever call or see them and I'm happier for it. I never spoke to Jason again, though he did try to reach out to me. He maintained contact with my parents for some time, hoping that they'd force me to change my mind. I still believe that what he did was scummy, to say the least, but I bear him no ill will, and I hope he's happy. Now, as I said, I thought we'd cover some entitled parents. It's been a very, very long time since I covered it, and I said I would never do it again, but I thought, why not, right? It's been a long time. Let's just... I forgive and forget. We just get involved again. I had a bit of time, so why not? Anyway, I hope you did enjoy it. Let me know if you did enjoy it, and maybe we can cover it again in the future if I find some spicy stories. I can't do the ones where they're just whinging about Karens all the time and stuff like that. I like to find something that's a bit more interesting, but I just can't do the ones where it says, oh, you can't take that away from my angel. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.